Hello, and welcome to the Rock Metal Podcast. I'm your host, John Harris, and today on Rock Metal Podcast, we have OBSCURA. They have a new album called A Valediction, which released on November 19th via Nuclear Blast Records. Right now I'm being joined by Steffen to share some more information about this stellar release, why the boys look so good in tight black pants and boots, and how they got Björn Speed Strid to be on the record. So, Steffen, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for the interview. Fantastic being here. Well, you asked many questions, and I have a lot of answers. So let's go straight ahead. Black pants, black is beautiful. Black tights, something you see under the pants if you're lucky. But Björn Strid is something really spontaneous that happened to the band, since it was not planned to have him on the record. It was actually something in between a joke and something we hoped that can happen, since we've been in the studio recording the new album with Fredrik Nordstrom in Sweden. And while we listened to the pre-production and talked about what kind of vocal style would fit here and there, I think at a side note, I just mentioned here, I would like to do something in the vein of Soilwork. And, the characteristic Swede just said, I produced probably 10 albums with Soilwork and Björn Strid, so let's call him. If you want to sound like Björn Strid, we just call him. And within 3 days, we had all lines, everything mic'd, everything ready to mix and master from his side. So that was really something we didn't expect, and quite a surprise for us as well as everybody out there.
Yeah.
But a pleasant surprise.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. So did he then record from his home studio, or did you get a chance to meet him and work with him?
We wanted him to be part of our studio documentary and fly over, but he was just moving from one city to another in Sweden, so he was not present and recorded everything at home.
Okay, in the middle of moving. What a champ.
Well, he delivers.
Yeah.
He's a pro.
Yeah, that guy works, man. If there's anybody who started more bands in the pandemic, I don't know. He's definitely started quite a few.
I think he is one of the most active singers in the scene at the moment. And at the same time, he's one of the most underrated singers, in my opinion. I'm a huge fan of his other band, the Night Flight Orchestra. Mm-hmm. And, of course, Soilwork are, let's call it a household name these days. But his voice is so characteristic, and if you listen to 100 different singers, you definitely pick him out of 100 different guys, because he's so unique.
Now, when you mentioned, when you were sitting there with Fred, and you mentioned that you wanted it to sound like Soilwork, was that what you had particularly in mind? Was having Björn sing over it, or was that part of the surprise? Was that Freddie just came back and said, well, cool, let's call Björn then?
It was an entire surprise. I just mentioned I would like to record vocals in the style of this band, because we went through all songs and listened to the pre-production and decided what kind of vocal style would fit to this chorus or to this verse, maybe add some studio magic here and there, add choirs, keyboards, something like that. And as a side note, I just mentioned I would like to do in this particular part something Björn Strid would do. And then, he came up with the idea of just calling him straight ahead.
Well, why do something like it when you could have it?
That's the point.
Mm-hmm.
And, so we had to spin this story a little bit further and also produce a music video that somehow fits to the entire vibe. So basically, it's our Whitesnake song. Whitesnake meets Björn Strid, meets technical death metal, meets cars, leather jackets, and sunglasses. So, I mean, that's absolutely, to me, it absolutely makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, obviously. Which I'm watching the music video right now. So everybody tuning in and listening, if you go down in today's show notes, you've got a few links that you can click today. realmofobscura.com, the band's website, as well as at the time of recording, 3 music videos that are available. When Stars Collide, featuring Björn Speed Strid, is the one that I'm watching right now, where you can check out the boys in a bunch of classic cars, a GTO, a Corvette, 2 of the ones that I just immediately saw, and then they start just, blasting away on a sweet stage with all that fog. So take us through this music video. How did you get these cars?
a friend of us is very active in the US car scene. And it turned out this scene is very active in Graz, Austria, where our drummer is located. And we just rented an airport for a couple of hours, and somehow, well, through people who know people, we got all those cars. And we were very, very picky about the look. We were looking for only US cars in a certain time frame. So no Ferraris, no Lamborghinis. We keep that for another one.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And they all had to be black.
Almost. Sorry?
They all had to be black.
That was a coincidence.
Oh, okay.
Happens.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sometimes things just work in your favor, Steffen.
Once in a while.
Yeah, once in a while, baby. Now, you mentioned working with Freddie, so take us through that, because, the funny thing is, he is known for a certain production style where you could probably pick that out, but I didn't pick that up on this one. So when you went to him, what were you looking for? Because it sounds like a very unique production to me that doesn't necessarily sound like him.
Well, there was no surprise because at that point, everything was planned entirely. We simply have been looking for a certain production that is timeless. And if I listen to all the records he produced in mid-late 90s, early 2000s, speaking of In Flames, Arch Enemy, At the Gates, if you would release those records today, they would go through the roof still.
Yeah,
they're still top notch and high quality. But what really convinced me of flying over to Gothenburg, working with Freddie, was a production he did for a British band called Architects a while ago. And there I figured he's also, capable of working with rather modern bands, and we are somewhere in between. And somewhere I read that he's actually coming from a pop background. So his focus is always the melody and the vocals. And this is something I wanted to improve. Compared to the previous releases, this particular production sounds a little bit more organic. You have the feeling, although there are no mistakes on the entire album, it's a real band performing. It's not polished, it's not sterile. It's quite deep and wide. It has a certain rock flavor, but still you have the blend of our, I would call it, signature sound. And this is based on the fact that we brought all files to Fredrik, and to reamp and somehow blend his expertise and his studio magic with our personal sound, our characteristic guitar sound. We simply ask ENGL Amps to send our amp to his studio. So we literally blended both worlds to have this product in the end. And for me, I'm not objective at this part. I love the guitar sound to the max. The mix sounds fantastic. It's deep and wide, and especially acoustic guitars and the vocals, they finally have some room. On the previous albums, they have been a little bit slammed or somewhere behind the drums, and I wouldn't call it barely audible, but hard to digest. They've been somewhere an accessoire, but now everything is in balance, and this was exactly I've been looking for.
Mm-hmm. What was that like? Was it euphoric?
Sorry, yeah, I couldn't hear.
What was that like? Was that euphoric? I mean, you spent all these years producing these records, knowing that you could get there, wondering if maybe you were crazy, but then you got there. So what was that like?
I wanted to work with Fredrik also on the previous record, but that is simply a matter of budget, to be straight. Yeah, you have to see it. All the previous records we recorded in our hometown, in a quite known studio, where everything is a little bit cheaper. If you travel with an entire band to a country abroad, of course, you have to cover this somehow. Mm-hmm. And if this country is called Sweden and everything is probably double expensive than over here, mm-hmm. then it's going to be even more, difficult to handle something like this. But since we finally made a lot of changes within the band, and one of those changes have been finding a new record label, we somehow are in the position now to make things like that happen. So we have been able finally to make a level up, since we have the possibilities through Nuclear Blast. And the same goes for, let's make a music video with a lot of US cars in Austria and rent an airport. So that all leads to the same. If you have more possibilities and you're using those possibilities wise, you take a chance, and also risks. It could have been a totally waste of time and money as well, but it turned out really, really well because we've been prepared. And then you have a product or an album like a Valediction. And to me, I'm very happy about it. It's an album from front to end that keeps you entertained. There are no repetitions. Each song sounds a little bit different than the others. And according to Freddie, it's called BOM, Best of Metal, because you have everything.
Okay. Well, that's cool. You know, when Freddie looks at you and in between talking about hamburgers, if he didn't talk to you about hamburgers, he likes to talk about hamburgers. And because he used to be a chef.
Mm-hmm.
Then look at you and say best of metal. I mean, how did that feel?
Fantastic. He's definitely a character, and we got along very, very well. No, I really enjoyed working with him. It was kind of an adventure for us. I was flying over abroad, recording for the very first time with people not speaking my native language, and also the entire environment was a little bit different. Also, it's still a music studio. If you feel welcome, you feel welcome. It doesn't matter where it is. And Sweden was definitely a wonderful trip. And working with Freddie, sometimes you just he just tells you a certain thing with one of the one-liners, like Arnold Schwarzenegger. There's that one-liner, and it says everything, and you start to think about it. For example, when we recorded acoustic guitars on the previous albums, we have been so eager to have everything perfect. So we recorded chord by chord by chord, a lot of cuts, sounded perfect. But when I talked to him, he just said, that's not how an acoustic guitar sounds. That's not the characteristic of this instrument.
Right.
So recorded everything in one take. Of course, it's doubled, tripled, quadrupled, but there are no cuts in those acoustic guitars. And so you have all the tiny scratches and when you change chords and everything. And this makes the entire album, it feels a little bit more real, more pure, like a real band. Mm-hmm. And that's just one example. But it was very simple, and sometimes you have to lean back and look at everything in front of you and just say yes to Freddie, and then everybody's happy.
Just say yes to Freddie. Cool. Now, you mentioned a couple of things that I wanted to touch base on, which was looking for a new record label, and then Nuclear Blast comes in. And how did that happen? Did you guys have demos of this album and you were shopping around and then they picked you up and then you worked with Freddie? Is that how that worked, or how did the whole thing happen?
A little bit different. When we delivered the previous record in 2018, there have been already a couple of record labels been reaching out to us and talked about the future of the band, where we are going to do, where we want to go with the band, and we negotiated for probably 2 years, quite loosely, not in particular with everyone. I knew exactly where I want to go. I listened to, in the end, 3 different record labels, and I choose Nuclear Blast because of different reasons. I got offers with much bigger budget, to be straight, and I choose Blast because I felt I can work on the long term. With Obscura, I'm always working not only for one record, and it's a one-off thing. I always have my concepts working around, and it has to be a series. And I'd rather work on the long term, but with a budget where that is somewhere in the middle, where I can basically deliver an album I'm satisfied with, and I also can step a level up. But at the same time, we are not greedy. So it's somewhere in between. It has to be balanced. And from all those, I felt here I'm feeling most welcome. On another note, I know most of the, people working in the US office, since we have been there for a lot of shows in North America overall. And in Europe, it's the same. We have been looking for a record label that somehow represents also the band, because we are not based in only one market. We are not only active in, let's say, Germany, Austria, Switzerland. We are globally touring, and this since more than a decade. So we need a record label that is somehow present in Asia, in North America, Central, South America, well, Australia and beyond. So, and if you think about that, there are not too many we can choose and we can work with. Let's see, and maybe we have another chat in 5-6 years. Perhaps I complain that this was the worst decision in my life. Or it's the other one, and I tell you, I just bought 2 new Mercedes, and everything is fantastic.
Mm-hmm. That's what happens when you're in a band and you sign with Nuclear Blast. You get the Drake treatment.
Well, the US cars we had to rent, so.
That's right. You know, I'm pretty sure a lot of those cars are rented in those videos too. Oh boy. Now, one of the other things you mentioned was you had your ENGL Amps shipped over, and I know that Freddie is obsessed with EVH 5150s. So, take us through that. How did that whole thing happen? Why specifically the ENGL carry-on?
Well, we work with the company since, I think, 2008 or 2009, so we have a very close relationship. Their factory is also probably 2 hours from my place, so I visit the company here and then. I pick up regularly different amps. We talk about handling gear, technique. We also developed here and there a couple of new ideas. So we have a close relationship, and the ENGL amp itself is a certain characteristic of our sound, since all the albums have been recorded with this particular guitar sound, and this is somehow part of a signature of a band. If you have a certain guitar sound, everybody, even if he doesn't understand what you're singing, immediately recognizes which band is performing. And I'd rather have original sound instead of something that pleases everyone. And the ENGL amps are, funny enough, something Freddy also works with since decades. So we had a Savage 120 shipped, a brand new one shipped to Sweden, and when I arrived there, I saw the brand new shiny thing, and next to it, the same amplifier, but from 1996, but the first version. It was not that shining anymore, but this was the amp he used for most of the productions he did in the mid and late 90s. So it turns out, as a coincidence, that my personal preference of sound meets exactly his productions. Although I didn't know that he works with ENGLs all the time. So that's absolutely, well, hitting the nail, I would say. So in the end, we did some A/B tests with both amplifiers, and he was very happy about it. And for the next album, I will ship a different cab over there. So we are going to blend different amps with each other and different cabs. So he's a real guitar sound nerd as well as I am. So we had a lot of talks and a lot of coffee.
I bet. All right. So everybody listening in, new album of Valediction out November 19th via Nuclear Blast Records, wherever it is that you consume music. And something that you guys had mentioned about this album was it was the best of metal. And I guess the other question I have for you, Steffen, just getting more into the album itself, is, does it have a theme? Does it have a concept? Is there something behind it lyrically? Or was there something that you guys wanted to do outside of just a production area with this particular record?
Yes. Valediction is part of a new trilogy. And, well, as the title says, it's an album about farewells. The obvious part is we left behind a big chapter of the band with the record label, with 4 albums that have been connected. But on a rather personal side, I lost a couple of friends, family members, musicians I've been working with. And that let me, well, write a couple of lines that are on a rather personal level. For example, on the musical side, Heritage, the last song, the closer of the album, has been written the week Jean Reinhardt passed away. We played together in Death to All. He was supposed to record drums for our second album, so we had a certain connection. And Alexi Laio passed away, Sean Malone passed away, the bassist of my other band passed away just a couple of days after we finished a tour. And on top, the COVID pandemic also took its toll for a couple of family members. So the entire mood and vibe was rather negative, not depressing, but still not on a positive side. So this in somehow represents a Valediction. And on top, I decided to go a rather digestible way. So the production got a little bit more organic, the lyrics more open-minded, or what means open-minded? More open. I think it's less abstract than the previous albums. And to round out the entire big picture is the visual department. All artworks are going to be produced by or drawn by Eliran Kantor, who also worked for Testament, for I think the recent Halloween album, and 1,000 others. So a quite familiar face, and he's drawing with oil on canvas. And this also gives a more, well, like a real and pure note to everything. So the big picture of the band shifted a little bit. And the same happened with the music videos. And I think most of the previous music videos have been mostly performance clips, because the most attractive part of the band somehow was always what happens on the instruments. But I thought there's something more to show. There are also some stories behind it, somehow got buried by all the technicality and the progressive approach. So Valediction is definitely like a new chapter, and with all the changes, I think it's just something fresh. So it's like a reincarnation, a restart of the entire band, although we are around for close to 20 years.
Yeah, I was reading that. You guys have been kicking around for a really long time. Been a little obscure, but didn't... Joke.
We are old. Just say that.
Well, I just found out that we're the same age. So,
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I know. Are you feeling it too? You go on stage and you headbang and you're like, man, this isn't 15 years ago anymore.
Every morning I wake up.
Cool. And then that pretty much concludes my questions. I mean, you got some cool guitar stuff we could always chat about if you've got another 2 minutes, but because I saw the ESP guitars, we chatted about ENGL. Looks like you also endorse EMG pickups and Ernie Ball strings. So, I mean, what was that? 81, 707, all makes sense. I guess my question is, take us through your guitar, your ESP guitar. Why that guy?
That's quite a long story, since I play this certain literally signature guitar since many, many years. I got the first one in this shape in 2003, built by the Polish custom manufacturer Ran Guitars. And they also delivered 2 7-string guitars a couple of years later, but I think they went out of business over the years. So I was looking for a new company and hook up with ESP guitars. ESP guitars have been kind of sensitive when it comes to building new shapes. So therefore, I first had to get the patent. So I own the copyright of the entire shape now. And that took forever, I think 2 years until it was registered everywhere. But now I own this shape, and we have been able to work on a lot of details to basically upgrade the entire guitar. The previous ones, they had some issues, somewhere the connection between the nag and body was not very comfortable. It felt like you have a big brick you're playing against while reaching the 15th fret and above. And also the woods were not chosen wisely by myself back in the days. I thought mahogany is awesome when I was 19, 20. So it looks awesome. It sounds cool if you're playing doom metal, but if you have really hard and fast attacks, it doesn't work at all. So in the end, I visited ESP Guitars in Tokyo. I got the entire trip and met everyone in the factory. And we also discussed about those upgrades, and it took quite a while to assemble and develop this new model. But I have one of those guitars here. We are working on a couple of more. But this first guitar, it plays amazing. So everything I hoped for simply turned for the better. It's also a little bit lighter. So we are talking about our age. And that helps a lot.
It's important.
On stage. If you play 2 hours a night and you have 2 kilos left on your shoulders, it pays off. It pays off the next day. You complain a little bit less.
This is true. So I'm guessing it's chambered of some sort then. And, we all grew up that mahogany was king. I mean, we can name a few guitar players who supposedly use those, and there's a lot of marketing behind that stuff. And I know we shouldn't. No, Dimebag used everything that's on the market. But like Metallica, mahogany, Dimebag, mahogany. Everybody's like, you got to get mahogany. What did you find that you needed to use? Something more like alder?
In the end, I talked to ESP and their custom guitar luthiers, and we made a mix out of different woods. So far, what I recorded with the guitar sounds fantastic, but I have to do a proper A/B test with both guitars. It feels better. It also, to my ear, it sounds better, but when it really comes to the physical part, I haven't had any time to measure anything at the moment. So alder is included, that's for sure. And we also have a rosewood neck. But we might change a little bit for further instruments. So we are still experimenting a little bit. Because sometimes it's a strange shape. It has a lot of massive parts in it, but therefore you have to try different woods here and there. So I think it's simply a try and error in the end. So we have to work on a couple of prototypes and then see what sounds best with which pickups. Perhaps we change those as well. I would like to, usually I play with a Floyd Rose trem, but perhaps a no trem solution would be interesting as well for rhythm guitars. Let's see. I mean, there are so many years ahead, and we see what we're going to do with that, with this tiny little design.
Yeah. Tiny little design to take over the world. All right. Well, Steffen, that concludes my question. So everybody listening in, go ahead and head into the show notes. We have a couple of links there for you. I went ahead and added a couple more. So we've got realmofobscura.com for the band Obscura. We have steffenkummerer.com for you can check out all of his stuff. And then we have the music videos that are available as of today. When Stars Collide, featuring Björn, Speed, Strid, Devoured Usurper, and A Valediction, which is the title track off of the album that we were chatting about today. A Valediction, out November 19th via Nuclear Blast Records, wherever it is that you consume music. So at time of airing, that should be available. You should go check that out. It's cool. One of my last comments was, it came across my desk as technical death metal, so I was expecting a certain level of production. And something that we chatted about today, Steffen, was that as soon as it hit me, it didn't hit me like a stereotypical technical death metal production. It was significantly more organic. It sounded real. And I appreciated that, and it's great to have you on and chat with you.
It was a pleasure talking to you, and I'm glad you enjoy our BOM.
It's a pretty good BOM. You got AOR, and now you've got BOM.